Today's farmers have high-tech equipment, from tractors to GPS to the hybrids, fighting for every bushel. Here to help is agronomist Ken Ferry
There's definitely some things that we put into our systems pyramid.
and agronomist Missy Bauer,
So we're trying to create that true V trench.
and they're using the systems approach to higher yields on every acre. We're Corn College TV.
Supercharge your P with Avail Phosphorus Fertilizer Enhancer. More P for your crop can mean more results in your bin, like an average of 9.6 bushels an acre of corn. Brought to you by Winfield, uncovering insights through data to help farmers be greater. Visit your local retailer or learn more at winfield.com.
Well, welcome to Corn College TV. I'm Clinton Griffiths here with Missy Bauer. Missy, it's kind of a cool spring morning, and we want to talk about our seed bed quality. Obviously, this field's already been planted, but you can really tell that there's a lot of different seed beds out there whenever you break it down.
That's correct. And when we think about seed bed quality, we want to start realizing that we have to think, how's our planter going to perform in that seed bed? So whether we got different tillage systems like we do here, or realize that it's maybe even what's down below. So on the surface things might look good, but what happened down below is an important part of that as well. And when you think about seed bed quality, it even goes to relate into things like seedling diseases or the potential environment. If we've got a seed bed that's got maybe a density layer and it's going to keep it really wet and saturated for long conditions, you really need to understand your seed treatments and what you have. So one of the key components that we want to remember is if you're a farmer that farms under multiple different tillage systems, so maybe you've got some farms that are no-till and you've got some farms that are maybe vertical tillage or conventional tillage. When you get to that field in the spring with the planter, we need to realize that we've got to make different setups and changes. And that's one thing that we did here in this little demonstration plot. Here we have a no-till environment. So when we come into the no-till environment, we needed to make sure our planting depth was still down deep enough. We changed our down pressure setting and made it a little bit more aggressive down pressure to keep pressure on that row unit so it didn't want to ride out of the ground. We also took our row cleaners here and made them a little bit more aggressive because we had a lot of residue to have to contend with. And then we still want to evaluate our closing wheel system and see if we need to make any changes there. That's a lot different environment here in the no-till than what we have behind us here with the conventional tillage, where in that case I really didn't need my row cleaners too much, so I wanted to actually raise them up. I had to be careful on getting too much down pressure where I could get some issues in that conventional tillage was very loose, and I had to watch my planting depth to make sure it didn't get too deep. So when you go from one system to the next, as we did here, we made different changes on our planter to try to get it to be uniform now.
Yeah, what about timing? Obviously the seed bed quality and the type of seed bed is going to affect our timing for planting.
That's correct too. When you think about a no-till environment like this where we have a lot of residue cover, it keeps it cooler. So it's going to keep it cooler for a longer period of time. So we always talk about that 50-degree soil temperatures at what we're looking for to get the crop going and to get emergence started. Well, this is going to stay a little bit colder. So maybe this no-till might get planted 2 or 3 days after something like this conventional tillage.
Okay, and you have an example here. We can actually see the difference in the maturity of the plant.
Yeah, because this no-till stayed colder a little bit longer, these plants here are out of the no-till. These ones on my other hand are out of the conventional tillage where it was a little bit warmer, and you can see these plants got off to a little bit quicker start. Okay?
Sure.
Doesn't mean that this is going to yield bad, it's just a little bit slower coming out of the ground, and that's one thing that we know about no-till, and as a farmer we just kind of have to manage through that. So we know that maybe we wait a day or two longer to make sure the soil's a little bit warmer before I get into this no-till environment. But it's really important as you change tillage systems to really consider what's going on with the seed bed itself, the amount of residue you're dealing with, and potentially what's underneath that surface seed bed too.
A lot of planters are running with coulters, and the question I'm going to ask a grower is, what do they want to do with the coulter? In my opinion, there's only 2 places for a coulter, and both of those are in no-till. But if I'm in a no-till sand or coarse soil where I'm worried about it drying out, I want to split the residue, put the seed in the ground, and keep the residue cover to keep me from drying out. I'm going to use a very sharp coulter, either a bubble coulter or a slightly fluted coulter that's very sharp. Cut the residue, leave it in place. This may be the only thing that I have on the planter itself. If I want to do some tillage with the coulter. I want to loosen that soil up so I can get the disc openers to slide through. Then I'm going to use a wavy coulter. So the wavy coulter is what I would bring into my silt loam, my silty clay loam. This wavy coulter is going to take more down pressure to get in the ground. And if I have much residue out there, I have to worry about trash pinning. But you can't mix these two up. If you take a wavy coulter into a sandy, coarse soil, it's going to push residue down in the slot because it's not a sharp enough platform to cut from. If this is going to go into coarse soil, I have to put it in combination with a row cleaner. So again, as I'm picking these out, what do I want this coulter to do? I want to move the residue out of the way and let this coulter do the tillage. Here I want to leave the residue in place. The bubble coulter or slightly fluid are only for my coarse soils. If I take this in a clay soil with a lot of silty clay loam type soil, this is going to cut a slot. The disc opener is going to follow in behind it, and it's going to be tough to close this up because I'm not doing tillage. So this has got a limited amount of soils that it would run in. Running this in the sand is going to give me trouble. So picking the right coulter. Once I get to tilled ground, I don't need coulters. And I run into that a lot. I'll get to the field and the guy's running a soil finisher and he's got a coulter on and he's pinning trash down. I ask him, why are we running a coulter when we run a soil finisher in front of this planter? And the response might be, well, I no-till soybeans with the same planter. And that's true. We'd like to have a coulter when we no-till soybeans. But you got to take that coulter off if you're doing tillage. If you're doing tillage, you're only going to be running with a residue cleaner to move the root balls and soil clods out of the way itself. Now, the amount of downforce we put on these row cleaners kind of dictates how well they're going to do in the field. I like them in a floating position, but sometimes if they're in a floating position and the ground is really hard, they'll come out on you and they won't do any work. Then we have to pin them. As soon as we pin them, they're going to go from aggressive to not so aggressive, depending on how the environment changes out in the field.
Wake up, breakfast is served. Your roots crave pea. Most of your applied pea gets tied up in the soil, a natural phenomenon known as phosphorus fixation. Fix the problem with Avail Phosphorus Fertilizer Enhancer. Avail makes more pea available to your roots, here, here, and here. Increasing pea availability can lead to increased pea uptake in the plant. That's more pea, and more pea. More phosphorus for your crop can mean more results in your bin. An average of 9.6 bushels per acre of corn. Breakfast is served. Supercharge your pea with Avail.
A successful crop takes more than just great seed. Winfield is offering bold new ways to see your fields from start to finish. A partnership for turning data into powerful insights. From selecting the right seed to providing tools for accurate in-season adjustments, we're there at every step. Because helping you get the most from your fields doesn't come from any one thing we do. It comes from everything we do. Winfield. Be greater.
Hi, this is Mark Gold with Top Third Ag Marketing. I have just issued a free workbook on marketing in the top third. This book contains all the major principles from my marketing seminars. And Top Third wants you to try an option at our expense. Included in the book is a coupon good for up to $150 in premium, plus we'll pay the commission and fees. We want you to learn how options can help you become a better marketer. Call 877-TT-HEDGE or visit topthird.com for details.
It's a competitive world out there. Dramatic changes are happening in agriculture. Land values are creeping higher. The market is nipping at your tail. Stay ahead of the pack by attending the Top Producer Seminar in downtown Chicago, where you'll learn from the nation's best minds in agribusiness and network with hundreds of like-minded large acre producers. Learn more at topproducerseminar.com.
Missy, if we crouch down and look at this field, you know, the plants came up all right, but we've got a lot of misplaced seeds, some uneven emergence. But looking across the field here, it looks pretty good on the surface. What would cause this?
Well, one thing we got to start to consider, you know, when we're talking about seed bed and seed bed quality here, is that sometimes it's what we've done underneath. So in this particular example here, what we put in a demonstration plot to look at was what kind of effect our primary tillage can end up having on that plantability pass.
Okay.
So in this case, we come in here with a chisel plow, and it was run just a little bit too shallow.
Oh,
and when
really?
we do that, we're not going to get good shatter from shank to shank. So underneath in the soil, it's like we've got loose soil where the shank was run, then we got firm columns where it has not been shattered, and then loose, then firm. So when we come in here in the spring with a vertical tillage tool to level it up, we make the top of the seed bed look great like it is out here.
Yeah.
But when we come through with the planter, it still feels what's underneath, and we've got loose soil and hard columns underneath.
And so it's going to bounce a little bit.
That's a lot of times what we see is we're going to get a lot of planter bounce. So when you look at the standout here, what are some of the key indicators when I'm looking at this that would make me concerned about seed bed quality and really the primary tillage that was done? When I see some of what we call these misplaced seeds, you know, so these plants just aren't spaced quite right. Where we end up with this misplaced seed is when we get seed tube bounce or ricochet inside the seed tube itself. So it was metered properly when it left the meter, but it has to get down to the trench. And if that planter's bouncing, we have more of a chance of that seed bounce around in the seed tube. It changes the timing of when these are then delivered into the trench.
Right, and then you've got a gap there, and I've got one here that is way behind the others.
Yeah, so we'd call that a lady merger. You know, why is that a lady merger? Well, chances are we dig that up, it's probably a little shallower planting depth than the plant next to it. So as that planter is bouncing, we'll also get uneven planting depth. And if we don't have uniform planting depth, then it leads to this uneven emergence. And you got to remember that this goes back to ear count. So when we want to have a good high ear count out here, we want all of these plants to look the same and be spaced evenly from one another. Yeah. So in this scenario here, we have a tillage system that's actually hurting our ear count.
Yeah, and if we look at a system in which it was done right, which I think you guys did right over here, I mean, you can see that all the way through. The plants are all there, they're uniform.
Yeah, what we see here is we had the same tillage tool. So same tool we had over there, we just dropped it 2 inches deeper. That 2 inches deeper allowed that chisel plow to shatter shank to shank. So we don't have these columns underneath. We have uniform soil density underneath. We come through with our vertical tillage tool and level it off. It's going to give us a good seed bed. So now when the planter comes through here, the planter's not feeling these columns and roughness underneath.
Right.
It's got a uniform seed bed and uniform underneath. Going to give us good stand, good spacing, high ear count.
Corn College TV, brought to you by Ag Explorer. Nurse your soil back to health with the right prescription of Endzone and Prevent.
What is your emergency? Need assistance at County Road 61 and Highway 9. Help is on its way.
Clear! There's a better way to jumpstart your soil back to health. Apply Endzone to protect and increase nitrogen efficiency without killing bacteria. Apply Prevent to increase phosphorus availability and reduce fixation. Better yet, use them both to get more from your fertilizer investment and see higher potential yields. Ag Explorer, your prescription for healthy soil.
Corvus pre-emergence corn herbicide. It's not just consistent, it's your corn-loving, broadleaf weed-killing, grass-crushing, 5.6 fluid ounces per acre. Rock steady, fast-track ticket to One Pass City. Corvus from Bayer. One pass, 2 modes, 0 doubts.
If it's your kid asking, it's annoying. If it's a billion people across the globe, it's a challenge and responsibility. Farmers feeding the world. It's about agriculture coming together to increase both hunger solutions and food production. Please learn more and give generously.
You want a stronger, healthier, and better yielding corn crop, but what you need can seem overwhelming. Well, it doesn't have to be. Bring the Corn College TV experts to your farm with Farm Journal's Corn College Education Series. Ken Ferry and Missy Bowers share their practical, hands-on advice organized into 4 easy-to-follow topics vital for your crop success. Choose the one DVD you need or order the complete set. It's time to take the next step to a stronger, healthier, and better yielding corn crop. Order Farm Journal's Corn College Education Series today.
We talk about seed corn today. It's quite a bit different than it used to be. It's going to be important as a grower to look at the label. It's no longer can you say, well, I'm planting variety X so many day corn, because there's so many different alternatives to the same hybrid. And you're going to need the label to tell you what herbicide tolerance or resistance the plant has. It's going to tell you what insecticides it has or doesn't, whether it's genetically modified or whatever on it itself. So making sure the label is matching up to what your plan is going to be important. When it comes to seedbed management, one of the things that we worry about is diseases. And today you can get an assortment of fungicide inoculants on your corn, and you're going to want to maybe get some help from your seed supplier as far as what you think your highest risk are, whether it be which type of water mold, whether you're fighting fusariums or pythiums, that type of thing, to make sure you got the right complete coverage or protection for that early season wet, cool conditions that you run into. So sometimes you may have to focus the seed treatment on a specific field that's giving you lots of trouble itself. And within the seed treatment, we also worry about things like insects. And there's different levels of insecticide treatment now that comes on the seed. Now, when we're not talking about whether it's rootworm resistant or not, we're talking about things like Cruiser, Poncho, Lorsban type products that would be actually treated, and they're going to come at different levels. So if we're trying to control a certain portion of the insect population, we may be using a 250 rate. If we're trying to get some season-long control out of there, it may be a 1250 rate. But making sure you know what your seed treatment is going to be important, so you can adjust your insecticide plan later on. Today now we have nematicides that we can get on the corn, and corn nematodes are becoming a bigger and bigger problem. So knowing which seed is treated with which nematicide so you can position it right in the field is going to be crucial. Unfortunately, as you can see here looking at the seeds, I cannot tell you by looking at the seed what treatment is on it. There's no way to tell that by looking on it to tell you, okay, this has got Votivo on it or this has got Cruiser 250 on it. It's going to come back to making sure you keep your labels, read your labels on the bag, and making sure the seed that you got delivered is actually what you were planning on putting in that field. And most of the tags will have some type of coating on here that'll tell you what the protective treatments are within the field itself, and you'll be able to kind of follow the label to know, okay, did we get a nematicide, or did we get a high enough insecticide rate, or do we have the right fungicide for the disease that we're going after? So it's going to take a little more reading the label like we should be on our herbicides. We need to be doing that with the corn as well.
Brought to you by Corvus, pre-emergence corn herbicide, one pass, 0 doubts.
For the past 3 years, Corvus has been the fastest growing corn herbicide. Experiences like John Gicks help explain why Corvus herbicide has become so popular.
We've had some luck with one pass, but I guess we always had to scout to make sure with our other products that we didn't have any breakthroughs, and then if we did, then we had to go back in and take care of those. And we still scout with the Corvus, but we just haven't had any issues that we had to go back in for rescue treatment.
Not only has Corvus proven to be a successful one-pass program for Gick, but it also helps him manage or prevent weed resistance.
The control that I was getting with my glyphosate was good. I was satisfied with that as well. But with the resistance problems that were coming, we knew we were going to have the issue with that. So having something else that we could go to that was going to give me the same control that I had been experiencing was important.
Risk.
It's the one constant farmers face each day: price risk on unsold grain, production risk up until your crops or livestock are sold, and opportunity risk on sales. The correct decisions can erase debt, boost retirement accounts, and recharge your business. Now there's a resource available to increase your marketing knowledge and ease your decision-making process. Farm Journal's Marketing Education Series. This 4-chapter workbook and DVD series includes Assessing and Managing Risk, Become a Better Cash Marketer, Fundamentals of Hedging, and Advanced Marketing Strategies. Farm Journal's Marketing Education Series, featuring pro farmer editor Chip Flory, presents real-world marketing scenarios, so you'll learn the correct time to utilize each of your delivery contract options, the proper hedging strategies, and when doing nothing is okay. Order today at www.shopfarmjournal.com and take control of your risk management with Farm Journal's Marketing Education Series.
Missy, we want to talk about how our tillage will impact our ear count and our yield later in the year, even though you may not be thinking of that when you're doing this in the fall. Let's talk about that primary tillage pass and how maybe this all works together.
Yeah, so what we need to think about, we're trying to get good seedbed quality in the spring. But in order to get that good seedbed quality, it starts with the primary tillage like you've talked about in the fall. In this example where we're at right now, the primary tillage was not done deep enough to get uniform shatter shank to shank.
Okay.
So as the chisel plow was coming through here, it would blow out around the shank, get very loose soil there, but in between the shanks it was leaving hard columns that weren't being disturbed.
And you may not see those, you know, from the naked eye as you're going through the field.
That's correct. So you come in here in the spring and you think, okay, I'm going to come in now with maybe a vertical till leveling tool that's only going to work about the top 2 inches of the soil. So on top it looks like it's a nice seed bed, but actually being that that's worked shallow like that with the new style tools, what your planter's going to feel are what's underneath.
Okay.
So if I've got this hard, firm columns in here versus loose soil in other places, as my planter comes through here, I'm feeling that. And all of a sudden I've basically got loose soil, hard soil that planter's feeling as it goes through.
And it's probably bouncing a little bit, right?
Certainly, so you're going to have a lot more bounce of that planter as it goes through there. You also think about, well, how would I even have the planter set up? Am I planting into that firm soil that would be more like reduced tillage, or am I planting in that really loose soil where it would be more like conventional tillage? So it starts to alter things like your down pressure as well as your planting depth out there.
Okay, well now we're mid-season. What are we seeing impact-wise from that?
Well, what we're seeing impact-wise is, number one, our ear count. So out here, we've done some stand counts out here earlier. We're around 29,750 plants per acre, but the actual ears out here per acre is 4,000 less.
Wow, so a significant loss.
Yeah, because every 1,000 ears per acre is worth about 5 to 7 bushels. So we could be looking at a 20 to a 28 bushel loss just in the amount of ear count that we've lost here.
Okay.
We can see that in this example that we have over here. This is from 10 plants in a row out here, and what we should see is a lot of uniformity. So instead of what we see some small ears, then we see big ears, then kind of medium-sized ears. That shows me a little bit about the variability. When you have these ears that are small, those are plants that came up later or that aren't spaced right.
Okay, and spacing is also a problem that you've seen through here, right?
Yeah, and if you look, we can look down some of these rows here, but there's a lot of issues with the spacing, and a couple ways that we analyze that is, one, measuring what they call standard deviation, which is just to measure variability. In this particular plot, it's almost a 2.4, and we'd like to have that under a 2.
Okay.
The other thing that we can look at are just spacing areas. How many misplaced seeds are out here, or doubles? And in this case, we're averaging about 4,000 misplaced seeds per acre. So that's a really high number. We'd like to have that number less than 1,500.
All right, so basically what you're saying is you can maybe look below ground for some of your issues that you're having above ground kind of mid-season, trying to diagnose what's really going on with your stand.
Right, the issue out here with the ear count and with the variability is because of a function of how the tillage was done last fall. So we've got to think about that kind of a full circle picture.
Today's number is 3. You can see it everywhere, and it can stand for almost anything. But when it comes to protecting the nitrogen that feeds your crops, 3 is the special number that sets Nutrisphere N, Nitrogen Fertilizer Manager, apart, because Nutrisphere N is proven to reduce all 3 forms of nitrogen loss. which adds up to keeping more nitrogen and yield where it belongs. So ask for Nutrisphere N, the stabilizer that fights nitrogen loss 3 ways.
A successful crop takes more than just great seed. Winfield is offering bold new ways to see your fields from start to finish. A partnership for turning data into powerful insights. From selecting the right seed to providing tools for accurate in-season adjustments, we're there at every step. Because helping you get the most from your fields doesn't come from any one thing we do. It comes from everything we do. Winfield. Be greater.
I've traveled around the world a lot. I've witnessed what we're trying to address here, and that's hunger. There's 6 billion people on the face of the planet today, and they say there's over 1 billion of them that have poor nutrition. They go to bed hungry. And I come back home and I witness the incredible productivity that takes place in American agriculture across our country. Somehow we need to do a better job of getting the food to those people that are in need. I guess when I look at Farmers Feeding the World, I say to myself, what do we really hope to accomplish? I hope we accomplish a design of a system that has a legacy that goes on for multiple generations. And I think with the knowledge that is possessed within agriculture, the funding that is within agriculture, we can get this accomplished.
Farmers Feeding the World is about agriculture coming together to increase both hunger solutions and food production. Learn more, give generously, dream huge.
So a few things you can do to try to evaluate starter fertilizer programs. One, whether you're using one or not, you want to try maybe some strip trials to see if there's an advantage on your farm or not, or if you're evaluating maybe different products or different blends. But we often get that question, what should I look for if I'm going to go out and evaluate differences in starter fertilizer programs? And one of the key things you want to do is get out there early. So in this particular plot here, we're evaluating the use of pop-up or in-furrow fertilizer. And so early, right away, we want to see, are there any differences when we evaluate these plants above ground and below ground? So I've dug these 2 plants up here, and I want to evaluate the root system. On this plant here, you can see that we've got a lot of root hairs here that are coming out. Our main radicle looks good with a lot of root hairs as well. The second plant here is where I do not have any pop-up on. You can see I still got a pretty good root system, but there is a difference in the amount of root hairs and the mass of the roots between these 2 plants, where I have the fertilizer here and where I don't here. So right away I can see if I'm asking the question, do I have a response to fertilizer or not? The answer would be yes, at least in the root system here. Then I look above ground. When you look above ground, one of the key things to look at is the diameter of the stems of the plants. So you can see on this plant with the pop-up on it, it has a thicker stem diameter here in comparison to the one that doesn't. So that's something else to look for. In addition to that, I also like to take a look at the growth stage. In this case, this is what we'd call a V2 plant or a 2-collar plant in comparison to this one that only has 1 collar. So we often see with starter fertilizer, in addition to the early root response and the growth above ground, that we also get an advancement in maturity. And already when these plants are this small, we can see that this one's likely going to mature sooner because it's older than this plant without the fertilizer on it. So those are some things to go out in your fields. If you're asking a lot of questions about your starter fertilizer program, get out there, do some digging, look below ground, look above ground, and do some evaluating in your own fields.